So we should now be alive and on the air.
Oh, well. And for our first broadcast of 2026, I trust that everybody had a wonderful holiday season. And I trust and hope that everybody is going to have a very happy, healthy, and prosperous 2026.
Do let's hope. By the way, this is year 5 of this stuff we've been doing. You realize that?
No.
It's our 5th season.
Ooh.
Yeah. We have a lot of videos in the can that 100 years from now people are going, who were those two characters? Because stuff is forever.
It could be that they will look back on this and start reading prophecies like Nostradamus and, who knows?
Well, we won't know. Or maybe we will know because we'll be watching from another universe,
Yes, those time portals can certainly be tricky little things.
Yeah, I know. Who knows? Maybe we're in a wormhole somewhere and don't even know it. Duh.
Well,
before we scare too many listeners and viewers.
Yes.
We should say, welcome to 2026. Don't forget to give us your support by liking what we go on about. Subscribe. Tell your friends that...
But certainly, if you can afford to buy us a coffee, we certainly wouldn't turn that down. Right?
Not at all. Not at all. And we started the new year with a bang, so to speak.
So to speak, yes. It's a thing that I think is unraveling in real time and unraveling in real time. I don't know which is more accurate. Is it raveling in real time or unraveling? Anyway, regardless, I don't think that we're going to spend a lot of time on it.
No.
It's well beyond our control, well above our pay grade.
Yep.
Talking heads are beating it to death as we sit here and speak on our little platform. But the reality is what's done is done, and whether you like it or whether you don't like it will be, I guess, for the history books to decide. And it's interesting to see the people that were protesting no kings and no dictators just a short 4 or 5 months ago were in the streets marching about this, and now they're marching in the streets protesting that a dictator has been taken off the streets. And I guess that kind of sums up where we are as a society right now. I'm not so sure that we could find our way out of a wet paper bag with a hole in it right now, but we just seem to be so focused and concentrated on things that are just things that we shouldn't be focusing and concentrating on. We should be looking at larger pictures.
Well, we're obviously talking about the extrication of the Maduro couple out of Caracas yesterday by the U.S. and both Maduro and his wife are sitting in a 4x6 cell on Rikers Island in New York at the moment, with indictments being unsealed that were written or created in 2020. So we're looking at 6 years ago. And by the way, those indictments were sealed by not Trump, but the Biden administration, who sat on it for 4 years. Apparently had no trouble with the Maduros doing whatever they're doing, running over protesters with the APCs and all that kind of stuff. What's most bizarre is, as you said, we have this elbows up crowd, which is, a pretty well captive audience of the Carney liberals who created the elbows up crowd, who now suddenly don't know what to do because, they are confused. What do you do with a son of a bitch who needs to be removed? Well, yeah, but you should do it legally. Well, what's that mean? Oh, international law. And what is that all about? Oh, well, it's the ones we made up for our people. Yeah, okay, but for other people that doesn't work.
I guess we've got that with a classic example of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has an arrest warrant out for him by the International Court for whatever. And I guess they could have gone that route, had an arrest warrant issued for this gentleman. And then we would still be where we are, because he would choose then maybe perhaps not to ever leave Argentina. And
Venezuela.
Or if he did, he would go to some place where there was no fear of him being arrested by this international warrant. So the people of Argentina would be where they were at this time last week under dictatorship.
You mean Venezuela?
Yeah, sorry. Yes, Venezuela.
Okay. Argentina. They have another guy that's running the show there, who is also not in the good books of the very people you're talking about, because he's a friend of Trump. Not good, But exactly. And by the way, just a reminder, because you and I are proudly critical thinkers, much to the dismay of some of the people who might be watching, is that the countries who support the International Court in The Hague does not include the big boys. The United States never signed that. Russia never signed that. China never signed that. So, when you look at others as well, so who are the international rules-based people? It's the ones who like to suck and blow. Let's put it that way. Your expression, because that's what they do. All right, like you say, they could have had an arrest warrant for Maduro. Nothing would have been done with it. Besides that, the guys that really mattered don't care. Okay, that's why Netanyahu travels the world. No one's going to arrest him. Okay.
Well, unless he comes to Canada.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Prime Minister told him.
Well, unless you're an old Nazi, you can come to Canada and sit around in the gallery and have the trained seals clap for you. I mean, anyway, I really digressed there for a second. I mean, but the point is that first of all, the hysterics at the moment are beyond, and it's stupid. I was watching some guys last night that said pre-production, or they're already, the hoary tales of Vietnam. What are you talking about? This is not Vietnam. This 24 hours later, some of these people have lost their minds. Okay, they extricated these two jokers out of Caracas. Apparently, from the pictures I've seen, doesn't seem terribly unhappy either. The videos of him waltzing off and on planes and stuff. And in a previous kind of world where stuff like this happens, they wouldn't have taken him out. They would have popped him right there, and that would have been it. There's not going to take you to New York for a hearing. And just to put the final cap on it, for these elbows up types that will probably now turn off if they're actually watching us, is that we live next to an imperial power. If we, as I said in pre-production, if we were going back 2,000 years in Rome, and the emperor decided that he was getting really PO'd with the Visigoths and the barbarians at the doors, they'd go out and destroy those attackers who were going to challenge the Roman Empire. Okay? I mean, Hannibal and his elephants went after these guys. All right? So we live in those times. And if you live next door to the emperor and the empire, you can do a number of things. You can be suicidal and decide you're going to make a big statement and put an end to yourself, metaphorically or otherwise. Or you go, okay, let's see if we can deal with this as best we can that works for everybody concerned, more or less. We got to stop dealing with the fringe issues all the time that seem to take up all our time in the media and what have you. The big picture here is never dealt with. And our illustrious leader decides at the very time that this thing is going on 24 hours ago, he's now going off once again to Ukraine to do whatever he does there, because I'm not sure why we're so wrapped up in the Ukraine thing. I had a guy sent me a note the other day. Do you know how many Ukrainians live in Canada? And I'm going, yeah, so what? Do I know how many Chinese live in Canada? Do I know how many East Indians live in Canada or subcon? What's that got to do with the price of eggs here?
And how many Russians are here? And how many, it goes on and on and on. We have spent, to the tune of, $24 billion in guaranteed loans. Like, a guaranteed loan is probably about as good as a blind trust for the Prime Minister. It's a piece of paper. It means nothing. If the country decides not to pay back, how are we going to get our money back? If that money ever got to the country to start with.
Okay, but let's just be balanced here for a second. What is our strategic interest in Ukraine? Someone please explain this to me. Like, what do we have invested in Ukraine that we're spending all this treasure and time and, I would say, political influence, which is really not helping us very much in the grand scheme of things? Because lining up with those warmongers in London, Paris, and Berlin, this is not. What's our concern there? We have an ocean between us, for starters. And again, what is Canada's strategic interest in Ukraine? Because I don't know. It's not my country. Neither is Russia. It's not my war, and it's not my problem. At the same time, we have issues right next door that we kind of try and ignore, as we live next door to this imperial power that can crush us like a bug if we're not smart here. Okay, because that's the reality.
Well, and coupled with our neighbors, we are not dealing with anything about our own country. The separatist movements that are building in Quebec, Saskatchewan, and Alberta.
Yes.
And I see with this latest little go round in South America, that people are now coming up and saying, well, we can't have this separation going on, because if you separate Alberta, there'll be no government bailouts for you. Well, I haven't really seen any government bailouts come west of Manitoba for about as long as I've lived. And I doubt very much that's going to happen. Well, you can't do that, because then you will have no negotiating power. Well, I think, yeah, they will, because regardless of whether the oil is coming up from South America or whether it's coming down from the tar sands, it may not be worth as much, but it's still going to get processed. People in Alberta can talk to the imperial power to the south of us, and that particular country has pipelines that flow east and west, north and south, all over the place. So it makes sense for them to go in and talk to them to get their product shipped out. We're just forgetting all the important things that I think we should be looking at and spending our money more at home. We were back in Alberta, and I'd like to say my reading of the matter could be totally wrong. Is I don't think that the vast population of the province really wants to separate. They will, if push comes to shove, I'm sure. But I think their preference would be, let's get some respect. Let's get some equal time here. Let's we're putting a bunch of money out into the equalization payments that we see absolutely nothing about. Or get nothing for. How about we put some of that money to good use? Like, instead of sending it overseas to disappear into God only knows what money laundering projects, why can't we have lunches for school kids in Canada? Why can't we have homes being built for the homeless? Why can't we have more spending on our military? Why can't we have our veterans taken care of with proper post-traumatic stress issues? I mean, there's a lot of things that money can go to help our own. And we just seem not to care about that. Well, I guess mainly because Brookfield doesn't have any interest in that. But
well, I think you'll find that some of the things you highlighted will be challenged by our friends who think that giving jelly rolls to kids at lunchtime is a lunch program, or giving summer weight uniforms to the military in the wintertime. They're doing stuff for the military, or discussing the purchase of new equipment that we'll never see out of Europe. They're doing, there's a lot of doing stuff, okay? Like building houses that we can't seem to count because the thing is that they'll always say that they're working on it, but when you say, well, show me the evidence, give me it's one thing to have wishful thinking. It's all very nice to put out these policies, but they don't amount to a hill of beans. I think yesterday when we were talking pre-production, no one's talking about literally the thousands of workers in the automotive sector in this province of Ontario that have gone. They got no jobs. That's like the goldfish syndrome. We talked about it for a while and we saw it. Now we don't care anymore. We move on. And as I was saying the other day with a friend of mine here in the village, they were going, well, what happens to this elbows up crowd when things don't go their way? I said, well, what they'll do is they won't talk about it. The biggest ruse in Canada is if things aren't going the way you want it, you just stop talking about it. Or if you screw up something, you just avoid. It's omission of the reality or the facts that happened a month ago, a year ago, or whatever. It's all about, I don't remember. Well, that was different. That wasn't me. It's a political trick, but we're using it now in shorter and shorter time spans. Because 2 months ago, the whole business of all those plants closing and people losing their jobs and battery plants going nowhere, and that was big. Now it's all forgotten. Now we're back into the doldrums again. Well, perhaps the thing that happened in the last 24 hours is perfect for the CBC and CTV pundit types. Oh, let's talk about something else. We don't have to worry about all those people that lost their jobs. Yeah, who cares? Okay, we got to go back to the boogeyman thing again. You're going to see big problems because Trump went and extricated those two gangsters out of Caracas. And go, what are you talking about? This is
and it's true. You talked about housing. I saw something in the flyby news here yesterday or the day before of we need to get more foreign investment back into our housing industry again. So because our housing industry is one, it's non-existent, and two, out here in particular, probably not so much because of the lack of foreign investors. It's a combination of many things. But our property taxes went down 4 or 5% just in my area. We've been living on a bit of a bubble on that anyway. But will foreign investment help out? I doubt it. One, we can't seem to get foreign investments to come in and do anything in this country because it takes so long for them to get processed. But then the other side of this, you start looking at the businesses now. Well, we cut back on our temporary foreign worker program. Well, I can't make any money because I actually have to pay Canadians what the wages, and I'm not getting subsidized by the government. Well, we can't have it both ways here, folks. You have to have something for your own population. You can't continue to bring people in who are going to do that job for maybe 2 days and then go and do something else. I'm sorry if that's what you were kind of basing your future on. I based mine on the fact that I'm going to win the lottery one day, but it probably isn't going to happen. But we can't continue to bring people in that have no ties to this country. No, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but this is not what is going to benefit us, and all it seems to be doing is driving spikes between the different provinces.
Well, but this has been the Achilles heel of Canadian unity from the 60s now. When we got onto this tangent about first bilingualism and then with multiculturalism, and it's rooted itself where the silos all over the country really don't talk to each other. Everything is based on some minority that has some issue which has nothing to do with the collective, if you will, of the country. And that it works very well for the elite class that pits one group against another continually in this country. This is why Canada is failing. There is no, they keep saying stupid things like diversity is strength. There's no such thing. That's a contrary concept. If that was true, then we wouldn't be where we are today. So the fact of the matter is it doesn't work. And they're not intending on changing the process. So when you talk about bringing in even more people that share no values, what's the problem? They're going to be poured into the various vessels that are called communities across the country that are either this group or that group based on race or religion or whatever. And these are silos of cultures, of legal setups, both socially and fiscally. In some cases, you cannot convince me that there's a patriotic scheme to be dealt with here across the country, because there isn't. And I think one of the reasons why you have this hate on, in particular the elbows up crowd in Canada with the U.S., is that they cannot stand the fact that whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, they're always Americans. I mean, they may be at each other 24/7, but in Canada, there's no such thing. This is all about, the toxic empathy for somebody else. Well, we've got this thing in our brain now for generations that we have to worry about someone else's feelings, someone else's concerns, not those of our own community. And so you see this inability for people to rally in a way that says, well, we're going to pull together for what? For the elites that dreamt this nonsense up, because that's what it comes down to. And even the guy who's supposed to be in charge, he never talks to me at a level that I'm the citizen that you're trying to convince that you're doing a good job for. You talk to me like you're talking to the board of some corporation in slogans and in all kinds of weird computations of the English language, and that's supposed to make me feel warm and fuzzy about what you're doing. This guy and his bunch around him, they don't talk to me about how I have to feel positive about what he's saying or what they're selling to me. They're selling something to me that's totally alien to me, and it's alien to everybody else as well. Because when he talks to one group, it's all about that group should not worry about the interests of the other group. It's a very Canadian kind of thing, and so you can't corral the herd, so to speak, because they're all different species.
Well, it goes back very, very classic what you had mentioned before, and it kind of stuck in my brain. Diversity is strength. Strength is diversity. That's classic 1984. Double speak, double think.
Sure.
Right? I mean, all we have to do, I think, is read that book, and we'd be able to pinpoint exactly where we fall in this country. The other thing that goes with that, you're talking about bringing people in to this country who have no ties to what we were, what we did, how we got to where we are in the world. And you showed me pre-production yesterday, your brand new passport. There isn't a single thing in there that mentions how Canada got here. They've taken out Vimy Ridge. They've taken out the plains of Abraham. They've taken out, I don't know what all it is, the Grey Cup, the Stanley Cup.
The one I like best is the page where the guy's raking leaves. I'm thinking, what the hell has that got to do with promoting a Canadian? Raking leaves in the fall is supposed to be a real patriotic thing, or what are we talking about?
And I guess that to me has been kind of the biggest slap in the face. My father and my grandfather didn't go off to defend this country, hoping that one day they would have a passport that has a guy raking leaves in his front yard in it. I'm sorry, it just.
Oh yeah. And I wonder what people who are in other parts of the world, when they sit at the passport desk and they flip open the Canadian passport, wonder what they're looking at. Like, where are you coming from, pal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, but you're right. It's these little tiny things that do kind of build up after a while, and then you're going, okay, so what are we talking about? And this is not about railing against, yelling at the sky or whatever. This is really common sense stuff. That why is it that we can't seem to be able to grasp the realities around us? That's what I don't understand.
Well, I think that's summed up in one word: media. It's been bought off.
Well, yes.
A year ago,
thank you.
A year and a half ago, during the Freedom Convoy, when it was all those redneck bastards from out west had the audacity to take the flag and go to Ottawa and honk horns.
Yeah.
And now we have the media that has a big campaign on. Show us your Canada with the Canadian flag in it. We've gone from one extreme where you're you're worse than a MAGA person if you had the audacity to fly a flag and show your patriotism to, and now it's okay to do that.
Well,
matter of fact, we encourage you to do that.
Well, as long as it's in line with that 30% that is the ruling class.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, why by not paying attention to the what's happening on the ground out west, because it's an organic thing that's happening there. We're done with this setup known as Confederation, and if it also begins to percolate in Quebec, and at the moment it's in its nascent stages, because there's going to be a provincial election, and the gang that's running the show there now is not particularly well liked by the population, and I think the smart money in Quebec City is coming to the realization that if those guys out there in Alberta and Saskatchewan are going to be sending us all this money in the future, we better start figuring out where we're going to be vis-a-vis this collapsing setup. And so when we focus, let's cross that out. When our leadership in Ottawa focuses on Ukraine, but doesn't focus on what's happening in the West and what's happening right under their noses in Quebec, then the chances are that this is going to be a very tough year, and we may see some very significant changes within the next 18, 24 months. And remember the time frame here. The thing that happened in Caracas yesterday, or the day before now, is highlighting something that I'm not sure people really understand yet. You touched upon the Greenland thing, and how manifest destiny starts to link up with the Monroe Doctrine and so on. The things are changing very quickly here, and we don't have the luxury of sitting around pontificating about whether there should be an X on your passport or an F or an M. We should be worrying about the much bigger picture here about, well, where are we 40 million people north of the 49th parallel, so to speak, going to be fitting in to a part of the world that's rapidly changing. Okay, if we're going to have to live next door to an aggressive imperial power, and we don't understand how we fit into that, since 80% of our work economically is with them, then we got serious trouble here.
Well, that's right. And then coupled with that too, and you mentioned, I think it was yesterday, we are basically the jelly in between two slices of bread. If this issue of Greenland is resolved in the United States' favor, where they go to the 40,000 people there and buy them off with American dollars, and I'm not saying whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. That's up for the for the people to decide on their own. But if it did come into fruition, we are in, I think, in way bigger dire straits, even more so than what the separation of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Quebec would be. Because now we have Alaska and Greenland under U.S. control. A little farther north, we have another great boogeyman called the Soviet Union, or Russia, or whatever you want to call it. And the water that's in between, which we had always, well, prior to the change of our passport, we had always had it as a sea to sea to sea mantra. And, we don't have a Navy to fix that. We don't have an armed forces to fix that. So where does that leave us? All of a sudden, what we know we've got U.S. subs going through the Arctic. We know we've got Russian subs going through the Arctic. We know that there's now talk of Chinese subs going through the Arctic. We have to start thinking a little bit more of what we want to see as a country, not whether we have a guy raking leaves in a passport.
Yeah.
We have just gone so far into La La Land, with the it used to be a cartoon, Family Circus. Bill, somebody or other, did that. And it was always mom and dad and the kids, and they were always talking about things and doing this and doing that. Well, I saw one the other day, and I thought it was just so appropriate. It was a 2-panel one. And the dad says to the son, well, Bill, what are the magic words? And the next panel over was the little balloon above Bill's head going, I'm offended. And that seems to be what it is. If you say something that somebody doesn't like or doesn't agree with, you become offended, and we will move almost heaven and earth to try and get you what you want. And that's not the way that we should be operating. I'd like to know which mindless bureaucrat thought it would be a good idea to take out everything that's Canadian out of a passport and replace it with snowflakes and, I have a fixation on that. I'm sorry, but
no, but it's no, I don't think it's not so much being a fixation. It's you're noticing the little things that become part of the mosaic that is the picture of Canada. Okay, so it's like a photograph is made of pixels, right? And you zoom out, and all the pixels become the photograph. And then you go, oh, that's what that looks like. But if you zoom in really close, all you see is little squares or dots or whatever. And that's really what's been happening with the media. If I can use that analogy, is that we're always focusing on the pixels, but never the big picture, which impacts the majority of people. But this is part of the 70-30 problem that we have in Canada. 30% of the country runs 70% of the show because of the way the system has evolved, or not evolved, I might say, for the last 100 and some odd years. Okay, we have a decrepit, broken down political system that doesn't really reflect anything that is reality based. The power structure has shifted from Montreal in the 60s and the 70s to the rest of the country. Yet we still talk about what does Quebec want, and God bless them, that's fine. They've managed to carve out a pretty good setup for themselves by continually, saying if you don't go along with us, we're going to pick up our marbles and leave. Except that twice they've said that, and each time it wasn't that they lost the referendum, is that they were given more money by those who, please don't leave. It's like a spoiled child that continually rants and raves, and the parents go, well, okay, you want that pony, we'll get you a pony. Yeah, but the other kids in the family don't get ponies. We don't care about that. We'll give you a pony because we don't want you to, have a temper tantrum. And so, it's a silly way to kind of describe it, but that's what we've done. But we've done it on many other levels as well. We talk about those mean Americans, but we're quite happy to have them protect us should the Russians or anybody else invade. Well, that's just normal, because we're their cousins. We're good guys. We're always good guys when we need them, but they're always jerks when we think we're so smart. I don't mean we in
the royal we.
The royal we, yeah. This is stupid. I think sometimes that the stupidity of our political system is runs parallel to the weak educational system that we have in this country, from kindergarten right to university. We're always teaching, ever since I can remember, more about somebody else's issues, their cultures, their history than our own. Kids today don't know anything about this country, and why should they? Their parents didn't know anything about the country, and their grandparents were the last who knew much about the country. That's a fact. So. And then the question is, what are we trying to save here? This sounds a little defeatist, I know, but what am I going to say to someone in Alberta or parts of BC or Saskatchewan? Go, we're done with this. Like, what am I going to say, living here in Ontario, which is a basket case of a province in and of itself, because it doesn't know if it's punch board or drilled at the moment. It's been deindustrialized. It still is the largest province population-wise. It does have some financial oomph, but it's oozing away with every passing month. And so, what do you say? This is not the previous two referendum eras in Quebec where we all had to go and sing Alouette because we didn't want Quebec to leave because we were afraid of what would happen if all of a sudden Quebec would be gone. And what do? Atlantic Canada would float off into the ocean, and I don't think you can do that today. I don't think that I can say to someone in the West, you have to stay because we love you dearly. I don't think that'll sell. And I would be disingenuous.
Get your coffee.
Well, we somehow have, maybe it's like a patient that's lost the will to live. I mean, it's just the way I see things right now. Like we talked yesterday, you see a lot of stuff on the internet, Canada's broken. And this is true. It is broken. And it's fixable, I think, if there's a will to fix it. But not using the same tools and the same methodology that we've been using for the past 50 years. You got to do something very different. And it isn't about rushing off to China or to Brussels and saying, oh, you're our pals now, and we're going to forsake, the 350 million people just to cross the border. That's not going to be the way to do it.
Yeah. I don't know. We were kind of hoping that 2026 we'd have some positive news to bring into the journal. That it seems doom and gloom. I think I'm like you. I think that there is the potential to fix things. But the problem is that there isn't really a wherewithal to do that. We've had two people elected under one party cross the floor to sit with the government, which then puts them within one seat of the majority.
Yeah, but that...
the Canadian population in the last several elections have basically told the government, you don't deserve a majority, and we're not giving you one. So we've got the government doing everything they can to try and do this surreptitiously to get their agenda pushed through. Yeah. And if that agenda goes through, then this country is not fixable.
Well, yeah, well, that's because it's a decrepit system. That, you know, you got to remember that this has been going on for 25 years. I remember when the Conservatives were in charge and said they were going to do things to change it. They never did it. Okay, so they get just as much scorn from me as the jokers that are running the place now, because since 2000, nothing has been done to fix this place by anybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We needed to do radical change here, and we needed to really figure out where we are in the scheme of things globally, and that just hasn't happened. I'm sorry.
Well, we are relying on everything that was in, again, go back to my favorite pet peeve, everything that was in our passport before, what made Canada Canada, is very reminiscent of when young Prime Minister Trudeau was elected and said Canada's back on the map. Well, he was thinking of the Canada that went through 2 world wars, through the Korean War, through the peacekeeping missions, that had some kind of stature that, thanks to his ilk, and I don't care whether you're conservative, whether you're liberal, whether you're NDP, whatever you are the ones that have slowly eroded that concept, that picture, into what we have now, as you said, the cultural mosaic, which if you zoom in, all you see is dots and squares and light colors and dark colors, but when you zoom out, it's got this magnificent picture of something. But we're so busy navel-gazing that we have no idea what that picture is, and we're fast losing the ability to focus on that.
That's why I say, to me, it's the toxic empathy for things that have nothing to do with us or things we cannot control. The toxic empathy of climate change, for me, is bogus. We can't, we make up 2% of the population in terms of the world polluting the world, 2%. But we're going to change the world. We're going to put everybody behind the 8 ball in this country because we're going to prove a point. That's a silly way to try and run a society. We focus on the minutia ad nauseum in the media. You name it. It can be cultural, it can be economic, it can be whatever. We always deal with a little tiny thing, but not the big picture, because that would suggest that, well, maybe a whole bunch of people aren't interested in the minutia. We're always trying to placate some little tiny fringe group at the expense of the majority, thinking that brings peace and tranquility and love among the people, which is exactly the opposite of what happens. We reinforce the silos. We reinforce the bitterness between people based on race, religion, whatever. We do this continually. We never talk about things that unify. Diversity does not unify you. That's the stupidest thing on the planet. Everybody knows that. Okay. Armies don't march across plains because they're diverse. Oh, I'll ride a horse and you'll take a tank, and you're going to walk, and you're going to use a bow and arrow, and you're going to use a gun, and you're going to use a sling. Like, come on, this is the kind of nonsense that goes through my mind when I hear this diversity stuff, and there are people who believe this wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I did see just before coming online today, the Palestinian protesters have changed their tune now. They're not so worried so much about Palestine now. They're worried about that issue that's going on in South America.
This is it's just bizarre, and I guess the problem is that it's fixable, but we don't have time to fix it. There's the time. We neither have the tools, which would be common sense, actual focus and interest in doing so. Those are the three tools that aren't in the toolbox. Not to mention the fact is that we don't have time. Time is of the essence here. The existential threat to Canada is not the United States. It's not. It's internal.
I think the issue of time is it's a nebulous concept. If our backs were to the wall and we had 48 hours to fix something, I think we could do it, because that's just the way. And I'm not necessarily Canadians. I think we as a population on this planet, if there was some alien invasion, some huge comet, some destructive force coming to take us out, I think that you would see that we would be all of a sudden very cohesive and working together. And not to say that we wouldn't fall apart after the fact, but I think that's one of the things that makes us us, is the ability to take a challenge and come up with things to get fixed. But at this point, we don't have that external threat that is big enough for us to focus on yet.
Well, the elbows up crowd will tell you the threat is very big and looming to the south of us, and
that's because they're looking at pixels.
Yeah, that's right. I disagree 100%. I think that we are our own worst enemy.
Yeah.
Okay. We're too busy fighting among ourselves because we don't share the values, because we're all diverse. My marbles are not the same color as your marbles, therefore, we're not going to play together.
That's Gulliver's Travels, right? You open up the short end of the egg as opposed to the large end of the egg. Yeah.
Or you get thousands of little people pin you down with lots of little strings. The famous picture of Gulliver, where he's pinned down by all these little tiny ropes all over the place. That's what we do in Canada. Okay. Wasn't it the Mexicans who said that they weren't very interested in trading with us because we have too many rules and regulations and red tape, and we drag our feet and we can't make up our minds and we don't know where we're going, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's really the Gulliver's Travel.
It is, and it's I think a testament to the Mexican government, who has zoomed out of the pixelizations and saw a bigger picture and had the audacity to bring it to our attention, which, according to the Goldfish memorandum, thank you for, what were you talking about?
That's right. My 20 seconds is up. Yeah, no, and so, we started the year off with a bang. There's no question about it. This is going to be very interesting, because the days and the weeks ahead will prove our theory right or wrong. But I truly believe that there was a cold wind blowing through the halls of Rideau Hall right now, after having seen what the boogeyman does when he says he's going to do something. Okay, so I would be very cautious about trying to pull off a Mexican President Scheinbaum reaction to Trump and the Washington crowd at this point. One of the things that I have come to understand with this administration over the past year is that when they say something which sounds crazy on the surface, it's probably got some foundational element to it, So if you take the Greenland issue as an example, everybody thought that was a stupid joke, right? It's not stupid at all. To those industrial powers that need the rare earth, that want to have the gold dome, this, because an imperial power decides they need that property, they'll get the property. Okay, it's just a real estate move basically, and I'm quite sure Denmark is not going to declare war on the United States in order to save Greenland. And in fact, probably they'll be remunerated quite handsomely for it, and that not just those folks who live in Greenland. Because interesting enough, if you take the time to look at the situation for those folks who live on little hamlets around Greenland, they have no real affinity to Denmark at all. They're living it's a pretty hard scrabble existence on a big sheet of ice out there. And let's face it, if you're going to be given an opportunity to do much better than you did before, or your kids will, they'll go with it. And it's just the way it is. So, like I say, it better be a lesson in critical thinking for people in Canada on this, because clearly the Americans are going to focus on the Western Hemisphere. Okay, as someone pointed out yesterday, I can't remember which commentator. The United States military did not send a third of the Navy into the Caribbean for fun. It cost billions of dollars to do this, and whatever happened in the minds of the leadership of the group in Washington to resurrect this Western Hemisphere protection position. We're in the Western Hemisphere. We can't move. They're not going anywhere. And we're damn lucky that we have more in common with that empire to the south of us than others do in the Western Hemisphere. Okay? So, I think maybe that's why the Prime Minister is rushing off to Kiev, to try and get some solace from that short little guy that runs around in the khakis all the time. I don't know, but it's clear that if you were going to take people's attention off of Asia and off of Europe, you focus on your backyard. And the other thing that, I'll throw this one up for the closure of this week's episode, is what if the whole thing has been nothing but a dream over the last year that we're going to do this and that to oppose Trump in Washington. What if, in the actual fact, this is nothing more than a con job, and one day we're going to wake up and the leadership is going to say, we're abolishing tariffs, we're going to open the border, we're going to align our foreign policy, we're going to align we're going to be a sovereign country. It's still going to be Canada, but we're going to be just like Austria is to Germany. Okay, there is no border. You won't go back and forth. We share the same money. Okay, but we're going to be Canadians and they're going to be Americans. But you know what? It doesn't matter. Business is business. Our trade is north-south. We live in the Western Hemisphere, and guess what? The guy we're talking about right now that's prancing around in Kiev will come back a bloody hero, because the elbows up crowd say, see what he did? He solved the problem. We're pals again. I'm going to go back and buy my condo back in Florida because that's okay now. Wow, it's going to cost us a lot less because now we have a real currency that we can use back and forth freely. I can do things there, and those folks can do things here, and all that was just smoke and mirrors. What do you think of that? All those people who work at the border in the CBSA, they have new jobs at the airports because they don't need to be there.
Mm-hmm.
All those people at the CBP that work on the northern border get to go down to Mexico to, chase narco traffickers because they don't need to be on the north. There's no northern border.
Mm-hmm.
because if the current prime minister, who's so enamored with the EU, is actually looking at how does that work, and he wants to do an EU-like deal between Canada and the US, but he's not telling us that, guess what? We've been conned.
Well, you say it's a what if. I've always had that in the back of my mind anyway. But yeah, it's something that it's a point to ponder, folks.
We'll pick it up next week.
Or yeah.
Let's see how quickly Mark travels down to Mar-a-Lago to have lunch in the weeks ahead.
Yeah, it might be on his way back from the Ukraine. You never know.
It's fascinating, but to me that was a nightmare, a year of a nightmare that actually didn't need to happen. But maybe that's the only way you could set it up. I mean, I'm throwing this out just as a give it some thought.
I'm sure there's a movie plot in there somewhere.
Well, like I said, I think of people in Austria who speak German, but they're not Germans. Think of the people in Germany who speak German, but they're not Austrians. But you can't really tell the difference, and they get along just fine. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Belgians and the French, and
I mean, and it's not. It works, but it doesn't work. I'll grant you that. I mean, I think the EU's has got too big and is doing too many things it shouldn't do. But it's like herding cats. There's 27 of them, and it's you have all different languages and religions and traditions. But the one between Canada and the U.S. is easy peasy. It's as easy and peasy as Germany and Austria is. Little country Austria. Big country Germany. Okay? Same money, same language, back and forth moving, trade, commerce, culture.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I guess the only thing that would be different there, and I guess it still is in the United States, I don't know if you can be a doctor in Florida and become a doctor in Washington State, or whether you have to go through the boards. But I don't see that
that won't change.
Changing because you've got a lot of little fiefdoms here.
Listen, every community is a fiefdom. You don't have to go not national. You can go statewide and you can go countywide. Okay, because that's what human beings do. We live in we're communities from towns, then we become villages, then we become towns, and become cities. But the fact is that. If you're a doctor in Ontario, you can't just pack up and go practice in Alberta or BC, because you're still going to run into the BC Medical Association that's going to have to say it's okay for you to practice here. Right? Those things won't change. It's not going to. The unions that protect their jobs in some town in in Nova Scotia is not going to allow people just to wander in there and take their jobs. You're going to have to join the union or meet the criteria of the Nova Scotia. Yeah. Whatever it is, pipe fitters or electricians or whatever, that won't change. That hasn't. It's still the same in the U.S. So you're not going to be overrun that way because we're not overrun even domestically with it. This doesn't change. Human beings are territorial that way. It's just the way we are. Okay, but on the sort of at the macro level, it's possible to do stuff like this. Right? What would happen if there was no border? Tell me, what would actually happen?
Well, the sun would come up in the east and would set in the west.
Yes.
Nothing would change, really.
And when I look at sort of the restrictions that we have now going outside of North America, because if you've yet this new little passport that I have here, which is apparently very powerful because it's recognized by more countries than the U.S. passport for visa-free travel. Like, so what? You still can't go there. I was looking yesterday at a list of countries that I can't go to right now, which are mostly in Europe and South America and Asia. Until I go online and pay money and fill out a pre-arrival visa approval thing, I can't get on a plane. Okay? It's very surreptitiously in 2026, January 1st, a whole bunch of new regulations started up globally. Okay? In our digital world, in our internet-connected world, you just don't get on an airplane and say, I'm going to go to London because you need an ESTA. You just don't get on an airplane and say, I'm going to go to Japan because you need an ESTA. So, in fact, everywhere you want to go, you need a visa. It's just it's electronic now. Okay? Pick the country, find out how you can get there, and you'll be unpleasantly surprised. Oh, and by the way, take lots of money with you because it's now getting more expensive. The other thing sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and it's getting to the point where you're becoming a burden. It was Venice where they started the first tourist tax, and now you've got the tourist tax in Spain, Portugal, Hawaii. Yes,
paradise taxes.
Basically, just send us your money. You estimate it's going to cost you $1,000 in taxes, so just send that and stay at home.
Well, it's more insidious than that, because once you go down sort of the rabbit hole of rules changing on January 1st, okay, because it's one of the annual things that happens, right? All the things that the bureaucrats and technocrats of the world invent that will go into force January 1st the following year. Well, not far from you and I, in the United States of America, there are 50 states that all have different rules on how you can drive on the highway. Because all the various highway rules now have changed so that if you want to go on an interstate highway, you got to pay a toll. So now they're coming up with all sorts of tolls on bridges, roads, whatever, because these things have to be maintained and have to be improved or what have you. So if you have an easy pass in Florida, well, that easy pass now will work in Pennsylvania. So used to be you would get a thing in the mail that said you traveled on the highway and here you owe me X number of dollars because you were, because they didn't want to put up booths and all that. Well, now it's become very expensive to drive coast to coast in the U.S. because all these transponders are now being linked together. So if you're in one state to another that you cross a bridge or go through town, or in New York you now have congestion taxes, all this stuff is, it's just becoming very, very territorial. Once again, all this stuff about it's all open. It's open, but you better have your wallet with you because otherwise you're not going nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the more you said it yesterday, the more they're saying, the more it's the same. Nothing changes. The way we do it changes.
Yes. The only consistency in change is change.
Is change. And that's why I say if they took the border out tomorrow, what difference would it make? Zippity doo dah. Okay, the number of people that will want to go north or come south, big deal. It would just, the only thing that you'd miss out on is a bunch of bureaucrats in your way because they wouldn't be there.
Yeah, true. It could be like that great TV episode, Bob Newhart Show. The end of the series after 5 years, he woke up and everything was just a dream.
That's right, and that's you're right. That's a good parallel to what I was thinking. The last year may have just been a bad dream. The idiot king was kicked out. The new prince showed up, but actually, the new prince didn't do anything. He just, smoke and mirrors, woo, boogeyman, no do, and then bang, over.
Yeah.
I know we're being silly now, but still, it's
Oh.
All right. Well,
that's the way it is.
Fine.
In 2026.
The 4th of January. Yeah, you're going to sound like Walter Cronkite. Can you do the voice?
That's the news.
All right. Well, I think we We had fun today.
We
In fact, we may have done a
death,
positive thing. Sorry?
I think we've beaten that horse to death.
Well, no, I think actually we ended on a positive note here.
Yeah.
You know, could be things will be all right. The
For
nightmare
people,
might be over.
Oh no.
All right, brother.
Andy,
I shall.
we shall bring this forth again next week.
Yes. Yes, we will. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the like button.
Buy us a coffee.
Buy us a coffee.
Send us comments.
Yeah.
Please.
Yes, I like the one from someone who wrote that they heard the clock go off on our last episode. Don't you know you got clocks? Maybe it wasn't the clock. Maybe it was my phone pinging. Your phone was pinging. I didn't realize that. Shows
Yeah,
up.
I noticed that. I just realized I don't have my phone with me.
Oh. All right, bud. Take care.
We'll talk to you soon.
I'll see you next week.
You bet.
Adios.